Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rich and Turbo Heavy Half Hour. I am Rich. You can find me on all the socials at rich.python, exit fuzz, Doom Rip, as a Doom Charts contributor, doing reviews for Musopedia of Metal and other generally annoying stuff. Turbo, what's going on? I'm glad that this is a video. Otherwise, the transcript might not read the thumbs up that Turbo just gave us. But we are very excited to have Kaleb Riser with us from Black Moon Cult, who you guys released the excellent Ophidian Future, the Children of Yig. Yig, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Yep, yep.
Excellent. Back in September, a very extremely solid number 8 on September's Doom charts. The dude who did the little blurb there is super smart. Also, excellent writer, excellent mind. But welcome, Kaleb. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thank you guys for having me on. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Happy to have you, and was a long-term coming. Thank you for being um, flexible with us and patient with us, because it's been a little bit as I have tried to get this all set up. So, Black Moon Cult, Black Doomba Records, correct? Put out, this is your first record. There was and let me know if this was on purpose or not, but there was a lot of, I mean, in our little sphere of the world, hype for you guys. It was a slow trickle of there's this band out there, and then there's this song out there, and then kind of a trickle of what you guys are all about, and then boom, this new record. Was that something that you guys planned, or was that something that just kind of happened organically?
It's a little bit of both. Um, I mean, we definitely wanted to be one of those bands that kind of like got our roots on the road and stuff. We've been touring for about 3 years now. 2 years ago, we put out one single with TP Records. We never had like an actual deal with them or anything, so it was just kind of had some friends over at the label that wanted to help us out with putting out a single. So we put that out, and then we've just never been satisfied with the kind of streaming atmosphere, like the current climate of the music industry, if you will. So we wanted to do things just more the old school way, where it's like, like let's not put this whole album up on just like Spotify and Bandcamp and then wait to get offers and go out on the road. Like we just decided to go straight out onto the road and kind of build the grassroots fan base that way. Got the record deal, um, and then put the full album out. And it was definitely a purposeful thing of like we wanted the debut album to have that kind of impact where it was we were signed to a label and it was getting the right kind of push.
Very cool. Yeah, that's definitely out of the norm these days. With how easy it is to drop singles and just kind of put stuff out there. I love the fact that you guys wanted to hone your craft and kind of get word of mouth, kind of a grassroots thing going out there. I think there's a few things when I think about your band, and one of the things that I love is how you have heavy, but there's like this psych element to it, and I love whenever you bring like the more psych element into things. And I think the other thing that jumps out, and I wrote this in the blurb for Doom Charts, is just kind of how a lot of people are like, all the bands that are out there are like older dudes who've been around the block and have done their thing, and now this is like their 10th band, and we love those bands, but like, what's the next thing going to look like? What's the next generation of that rock going to look like? Which is why I was so excited when I heard the record. Where do you get that old school kind of thinking and vibe from that you bring to the band, whether it's musically or just the approach with how you put the record out, how you went on the road for all those years to hone your craft, etc.?
I think my grandma's music taste had a big impact on me as a kid. She grew up at like during the height of Beatlemania, like she saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and like all that kind of thing. So early on, she got me like some Beatles CDs and some Beach Boys CDs and like some Monkees CDs, and all of those bands kind of like dabbled in the psychedelia and stuff. So that kind of it was a natural transition for me to like find all the 60s psych bands through the earlier British invasion stuff. And then the psychedelic stuff has always been like really my favorite music. and the British invasion stuff too, and like 50s doo-wop and stuff. That's kind of where like my that's like when we're driving in the touring van and stuff, that's like all we're listening to is like 50s and 60s tunes. Um, and then as I got a bit older and stuff, I kind of got into like some heavier music. Like I heard Sabbath and Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith, and then on to like Metallica and Pantera and stuff. Our drummer's like a really big metal guy. So it's really just like a mix of tastes that kind of like form our sound. Like I definitely push like the psych stuff the most. Like that's like what I always want to be more trippy, more psychedelic. Some of the newer material that we're writing, it's definitely like more psychedelic than the first album, but it's also a lot heavier than the first album is too. So it's kind of um that just the mix of influences within the band. Yeah, and all of my grandparents like really chipped in to give me some cool music. Like my mom's dad turned me on to like King Crimson and Rush and Gentle Giant and Yes and like cool prog bands. And then my dad's dad showed me like Led Zeppelin and more of the like Deep Purple. Through Deep Purple got into Captain Beyond, and that's like one of our biggest influences in BMC. Um, so it's really just like, yeah, like my grandparents' music taste rubbing off on me.
That's awesome. I think this is a couple of comments to make. First time grandparents got a shout out, I think, on our show. So shout out to the grandparents. Number two, our show is getting very prog lately, Turbo, I would say, with how many times King Crimson gets mentioned on this show. It's actually pretty funny. And number three, anyone who sleeps on the Monkees is missing out on
I know.
really cool stuff. I love the Monkees. And I actually they had like a kind of a revival in the late 80s early 90s, I think it was, and that's when I kind of found out like MTV suddenly had the Monkees on all the time, and you listen to those records and you're like, I know that they didn't write the song, sometimes they didn't play it, but like the songs that they wrote and what they put out there, there's some quality pop psych 60s stuff out there. So
That's it. I
um,
feel the same way about like Elvis, and so we listened to a lot of Elvis this last tour, and like Elvis was definitely like a super manufactured thing, but like the people that were manufacturing him like really had it and stuff. Like Scotty Moore is like one of the best guitar players ever. So yeah.
awesome. Turbo, what do you got? We talked about the Monkees and King Crimson on the show so far, which is we're hitting lots of stuff.
First of all, are you wearing a Christmas sweater?
I am. Yeah.
Never too early,
uh,
I guess.
It's getting
In
cold here
Toledo.
in Ohio. It's getting
yeah.
cold here in Ohio. So I came home from work today and I was like, I want to put on something cozy. And I found this thing. It doesn't get cozier than the Christmas sweater.
We appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
Um, so, where does your love for H.P. Lovecraft come from?
Um, I think Wino actually like from like the Obsessed and stuff like that, or maybe Matt Pike. I know like what about maybe my freshman year in high school or eighth grade or something like that. I was watching some interviews with those guys right when I was getting into stoner rock and stuff, and I heard I think I've heard both Wino and Pike reference H.P. Lovecraft, so I was like, okay, what's up with this? And then you kind of, you know, find out about the Cthulhu mythos and then everything else, and then I've got his full collection at my on my bookshelf now, and he's definitely like a constant source of inspiration for us. Um, like he was our my inspiration to create our own sort of like world that we build in with it on our lyrics. Like it Ophidian Future isn't a concept album top to bottom. It's not one continuous concept, but all of those songs happen in one world, kind of like how H.P. Lovecraft stories do, or how like Quentin Tarantino movies do. So there's like some cross referencing, uh, like in At the Mountains of Madness references the Moonchild ritual a little bit, and there's we have a single out Hollow Traveler that references a little bit of all that stuff. And Yeah, so it's all that was all the Lovecraft kind of influence, and then the cosmic horror, it fits well into like the psychedelic. Like there's always like this fight between like the metal half of me and then like the real 60s psychedelic half of me. Um, and the HP Lovecraft stuff fits in this really cool mid space where it's like it's scary and heavy, but it's also really cosmic and spacey, and you can write like a Hawkwind type song, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It turned out really well. Way you mixed it in with the music and everything. So
Thank you, man.
it's
Thank
awesome.
you.
I'm big on things that call back other things. Like you mentioned, like Tarantino, how like in Reservoir Dogs, he's talking to people who kind of show up in Pulp Fiction, and like there's this little universe that's built. I always love that kind of stuff. It's also why I love The Simpsons, because they always call back to older things and reference other jokes and whatnot. So that's a really it's a really cool thing to do, but it's also, I don't want to say hard, but you have to kind of stay in that little mindset, right? When you're writing, does it limit what you're thinking and how you're writing, or does it actually expand because now it's your universe, so you can do and kind of say whatever you want?
I think it can be a little bit limiting, but sometimes like that challenge of figuring out like our song Sunfish is kind of like it's the only song that's not explicitly sci-fi on the record. I wrote it, my little brother was kind of going through a bit of a tough time in his life, and he's like a passionate like fisherman, also an incredibly talented musician, and like I can't hold a candle to this kid's guitar playing, just one
Wow,
of the
that's
best.
a bold statement, Caleb. That's a bold statement.
My little brother is one of the best guitar players that I know, and he chooses to clock out of work every day and go down to the river and cast and reel and all the love and respect to him for that. So Sunfish was kind of wrote for him, but after I wrote that, I kind of figured out a way to fit it more into with my lyrical style. Everything's always going to be a little bit cosmic and spacey and metaphorical. Um, And then I think maybe I have an idea for how Sunfish fits into the rest of the world. Maybe it's not apparent to everybody else out there, but maybe we'll write another song that makes it more apparent or something like that. I also try not to get too bogged down with it to where, because sometimes with prog I feel, and concept stuff in general, is if it exists too much in its own world, then it really just like it's like it insists upon itself. And I want every single one of our songs to be able to be listened to standalone as a single. You don't have to know anything. Like probably 90% of the people that listen to our music probably have no idea there's any concept behind it at all. And I want it to be that way. I want it to just stand alone as good rock and roll pop singles, but I also want it to be this kind of like deep proggy. Like if you want to go looking for the concept, it's definitely there. And if you want to get into the vinyl and read through the lyrics and stuff, you'll definitely see that stuff. But my goal first and foremost is just to write a good, catchy song.
And that just brings me to like a band like the Who I just love the Who. And Tommy, obviously a very, very specific story, but like Pinball Wizard, maybe one of the best single rock singles like ever. And you
Right.
don't need to know what's going on with that song, but you bring that into the realm of Tommy and the universe, and it makes perfect sense, and it exists how it should. But you don't need that. You can have Elton John covering that song, having no relation to what's going on in Tommy, and still that be one of the greatest rock songs ever written.
Right,
So
right.
that's I think I get what you're saying there. And then you brought up the guitar stuff. Um, Everybody who I talk to in our little realm of the heavy underground, you talk to like Sean Patrick Brooks and those guys who just, and I agree with you, call you this guitar virtuoso. Like what you do when you play is some next level stuff. You mentioned Pike, you mentioned Wino, at least from a writing standpoint. Who are your guitar heroes outside of those guys, if there are other ones that you would want to mention?
Man, this is always such a tricky question. Hendrix, Iommi, and then kind of a tie spot between Sid Barrett and David Gilmour are probably my all-time top three. But then I'm also like massively inspired by players like Tommy Bolin, players like Frank Marino. I mean, within our scene, the first guy that really impacted me was Jason Simon from Dead Meadow. Like I've never to this
Wow,
day
cool.
I don't know anybody else that plays guitar like that dude. Uh, and Ed Mundell from Monster Magnet is another hero of mine within this scene. We actually just got to jam with him too when we were in LA. He came up and did a Sabbath
Oh,
cover with us. So
That's freaking awesome.
that was
that's
super bucket
awesome.
list for us. Uh,
Did that get recorded?
there's some video somewhere, and then I also got up. It was Ed's band Ultra Electric Mega Galactic. I got up and did the song "Evil" by Cactus with them. So we were just kind of like we got connected. Our booking agent is Patrick Brink from Volume,
Yeah,
and
yep. We had Patrick on the show before. Yeah,
yep, and he was booking our West Coast tour, and Ed played on the Volume record, so they're good buddies and stuff. So he asked Ed if he wanted to be on our LA show. They hopped on, uh, and then we just kind of got connected, had a couple-hour phone call one day, and kind of hit it off, and then yeah, ended up jamming together. Uh, and that was super cool. Yeah, that I'm sure there's some video of it somewhere. I haven't been able to find it, but I know some people out there were recording. So
very cool. It's it probably gets annoying saying, "Oh, you're young," but the thing that I think I'm most impressed with you is like you're almost like a PhD in this music. Like the shit you're calling out is very very cool, and how you've gotten kind of into that and kind of almost like a student of rock. Am I overthinking that, or because it just like to call out some of the guitarists that you just called out? That's not. I mean, Turbo and I, especially Turbo, could tell you all about those guys. But we don't hear that a lot from people and those players who are so really good, but not necessarily ones that people would call out as key influences.
yeah, I am a totally one track mind about like guitar playing and guitar players. I'm also really big into like country players, by the way. I really love like I play a Telecaster. A lot of people kind of note that as like something a little interesting in this scene because it's single coil pickups, a proper country Telecaster. But players like Danny Gatton, Daniel Donato, Kenny Vaughn from Marty Stewart's band. Marty Stewart is a great player too. Um, I'm just obsessed with guitar playing of all styles, and I've had like a little bit of a phase with just about every style there is. I started out kind of doing the blues rock stuff, and then I got into metal. Um, in metal, you dabble a little bit in the neoclassical stuff. I was really into like Eddie Van Halen and George Lynch is one of my favorite players. I've seen him live a few times, and I'm always like trying to steal some of whatever he's got going on. Um, and then I got at once the metal band I was in high school broke up. Then I went and studied jazz for about a year, really into like a lot of Miles Davis's electric players. And yeah, I'm just a real nerd for guitar playing, and it's pretty much all I think about on a day-to-day basis. A little bit of like 80s B horror movie here and there, and but it's mostly like I'm just obsessing about music and guitar playing and music history. The guys and I, we always joke, it's like I wish there was a way to make a living off of knowing pointless factoids about rock and roll history, because that's
We'd be millionaires, Turbo and I. I think we'd be millionaires. We would.
yeah, yeah.
Um, that's really funny. And I think Rolling Stone did like a top. I don't know if it was 200 or 100, and they didn't include George Lynch in that list. And I was like, a lot of people were like, I don't understand. Like George Lynch is ridiculous, and I think unfortunately he got kind of packaged in with what people thought of Dokken. But you listen to those early Dokken records, and I mean that dude shreds. That is some of the most ridiculous stuff that was out there at the time.
I think he and Warren DeMartini, along with like Jakey Lee too, are probably like the three best guys that came in that kind of like post Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads thing. And George Lynch really is like belongs in that space with Randy and Eddie because he was early on in the game too and was influencing a lot of guys locally. He just didn't have that global impact till a few years later into the 80s and stuff. But I mean, as far as I know from all the stories and everything, is like he was in the same clubs as Eddie was when they were both coming up and stuff. So he doesn't get his due. And lucky for us though, he's just touring clubs though, man. Because if he was any
Yeah.
bigger, you know, so it's like it's cool because then you could just get a $20 ticket and go up and be 5 feet away from one of the greatest guitar players of all time. You know.
I'm just here to piss off the Van Halen people. I'm just going to say that George Lynch was also stuck with a douchebag lead singer, just a different type of douchebag. So I think sometimes that's what gets, maybe him a little bit overlooked because Don had quite the personality. And also, as Don has grown older, has become less and less easy to love as a fan of Dokken from back in the day. As a connoisseur, I don't even know if that's the word. As a lover of music of that time, the two other names I will call out, Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme for me, and I'm not a guitar player, but just like watching him and the stuff that he did, and then watching the Sabbath show, that last show, and they just brought him out to do anything. Like, you got to do a Van Halen song, we're going to have Nuno do it. You got to do this, you're going to have Nuno do it. Like, Nuno can just do anything. And that, to me, and also when they did Live Aid, when they did the Queen covers, when Extreme was doing the Queen covers, I thought Nuno was like the man. And I always have to talk about Jason Bieler from Saigon Kick, who I think has always been a super underrated player. I'm very, very partial and very the biggest Jason Bieler fanboy. Please don't re-up the restraining order, Jason. I still love you. Anyway, and Jakey Lee. Turbo and I share a love of Badlands, that first Badlands record, and just what Jake did there. And unfortunate what happened with that band because they had such a talented roster, but Jake was amazing. I'm blabbing on as usual.
I'm gonna throw.
What's
one
that?
more
Yeah, please.
I'm not a White Lion fan very much, but Vito Bratta is one of the sickest guitar players. Like if it go and just skip to the guitar solos on White Lion songs, and it's like, what the fuck, man? This guy's
You are preaching to the choir. And if I mention that there was a douchebag in Dokken and Van Halen, the biggest douchebag is Mike Tramp, who, and anyone who, I'm just saying this, if Mike Tramp wants to come on and debate me, I would love to have him. He put out 3 volumes of him covering his own songs, and they made them so much worse than they were. Because Vito was really, in my opinion, agree with you, what made White Lion, not Mike Tramp. And he did a cover of Radar Love. I don't even know how you can do that. Like, is that even legal? Anyway, Turbo, I am babbling as usual. What do you got for Kaleb?
Well, several things to try to calm you down and see if you can.
I'm all fired up now.
Relax. It was great to hear that you mentioned Warrior Dan Martini because I don't think he gets enough love.
Yeah.
Also, I think. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're great. That when I got the Out of the Cellar CD, I think I got it the year I started driving, and I put it in my '97 truck, and it lived in there the whole summer. I didn't take it out. Just that album on repeat, on repeat. Like the guitar playing, both guitar players are phenomenal. The whole band is really too. The Rat doesn't get enough love in hindsight because they were so huge in the 80s. They were so, like, you see videos of them playing and they were playing the biggest places, and then for some reason it just kind of, and they kind of got left behind while other
They're
bands
kind
like
of iffy live,
like
though.
Poison. Yeah.
I saw them live twice. Once it was just horrible. They were some of it was technical difficulties, but some others were Steven was screwed up a lot of the songs, and I think he was just a little too drunk.
And that'll always.
The second time I saw them, they were really great. So it's one of those things. I guess you could just, if you luck out on a good show or not. But yeah, definitely they kind of got lost into the mix there with when all that other hairband stuff started coming out.
What else, Turbo?
What was I going to say? I was going to say something. One, I think your brother may be an incarnate of Jerry Reed, because Jerry Reed's a great guitar player, and all he ever wanted to do was fish. So maybe you might want to check that out. The video for Stone Date, is that your concept, or was that somebody else's concept? Do you have any more disco mushroom balls?
Yeah, it was. So it was mostly my concept. And then the director had a little bit of input here and there. There were certain scenes that we just kind of like did on the fly and stuff. But the concept of like an ape discovering this kind of, we were calling it the mushroom monolith because that's what the lyric is in the song. Of course, we didn't have the budget to make an actual monolith, so it ends up being a little disco. See, when we ordered it offline, it was supposed to be about this. It was, and then it shows up.
Spinal Tap.
Exactly. And we're like, this will work and stuff. But yeah, that video was made on a budget of like $200, with all the props and stuff. So what we got out of that was we're so proud of it. But yeah, mushroom. He finds the mushroom. It transports him to an alternate dimension of rock and roll and partying. He takes on a human form. He's trying to figure out the meaning of all of this while partying and stuff, and he's kind of, experiencing weed and fucking rock and roll for the first time, and then he runs back into the kind of alien being that first brought the mushroom monolith to him. Um, gets transported back to the world. Now he's in it. It's an out there kind of concept. Some people watched it and they're like, I don't get this at all. Like a lot of our friends and our parents especially had like no clue what the video was about. I'm not even sure if we do. I'm not sure if we do at this point either. But I'm really stoked with how it turned out. We're really big into like old
really
trauma movies and like low budget indie horror films and stuff like that. So a lot of it was like an homage to that, and then kind of early Adult Swim, kind of the 15-minute episodes you'd see at like 2 or 3 in the morning, kind of deal.
Right. You got a guy, when it shows you all playing on stage, there's a guy playing theremin, but you don't have theremin listed as instruments being played on the album. So was that just live, or is that included in the album?
Yeah, we've added a fourth member to the band recently.
Okay.
And theremin isn't listed. I think we use like a delay pedal and a synth to create a lot of theremin-like noises on the record. But then when we play him live, he's recreating all of that stuff live with the theremin. Um, but our bass player Kevin is a piano teacher for a living, so he's like super into synths and keyboards. I mess around with analog synths and keyboards. For a while, we tried to do the Rush thing, where it was like Kevin had a keyboard in front of him and he would be playing bass and then switch to keys, and then I had a small synth and I would do some stuff. And it's challenging to do that kind of stuff live. Um, and then it was a hassle for just three of us to be carrying that much equipment with no roadies or anything like that. So we retired the synths from the live show for maybe about a year. Uh, and then when we got the mix and master back from Tony Reed for the album, we put synths and all sorts of weird instruments all over the record. And when we got the mix and master back, we were like, this is a pretty big part of our sound. Like the record definitely doesn't sound like a trio. Um,
Mm-mm.
so that's when we wanted to add a fourth person. So now Logan May, he joined about 6 months ago, and then he debuted with us in the late summer, and then he just did our West Coast tour with us, and he's killing it. And it's definitely like everything. That's something we've wanted for a while, but it's such like a hard position to fill, especially where we're at. Like he's the only person we know that plays synth and theremin, so it's like if we hadn't found him, we were just kind of like searching for the longest time, and then we finally found the guy, and it's filled out the band in all the ways we wanted it to, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're like recently there's been you're like the fourth band that we know of that has a theremin player in it. So that's
Yeah,
really cool.
and shout out to Jer from Florist. My new favorite band is Florist. They're from Tampa, and Jer just is a theremin synth playing fool. Like that's what he does on stage, and he is just. I just stood there and stared and watched what he was doing the whole time. This is like maybe the fourth episode where we've mentioned it, and especially recently. But a band like Florist is one who have made like the theremin and the synths like a key part of the heavy that they're doing. If you haven't heard that record, Kaleb, I think it might be something that you'll dig because they bring the heavy, but they bring the psych and the space stuff and just kind of big.
It's fucking incredible. I've checked it out. It's fucking incredible. They absolutely rip. Yeah, every band should have a theremin. Every band should have a theremin. They're the coolest things ever. I was in a band, man, it's like 6, 7 years ago now. It was more of like a psychedelic kind of punk kind of. It was kind of like Iggy and the Stooges, but kind of surfy at the same time. Uh, we had a theremin in that band. That's when I first started messing with stuff like theremin and synths and stuff like that. And then we're all really into Hawkwind in this band, and that was like the thing where for us the synths and the theremin, it's like for our reference, it's like it's a Hawkwind thing to where at the core it is like a driving rock trio. And the songs are written that way, but then we've always heard it with like this big kind of ethereal expansion of like subsynths and filters and theremin. So that's, you know, and it's awesome to have that live now because it's definitely like elevated our live shows. Um, and like it, people don't forget a theremin. They don't see them enough. So then you see people see you with a theremin player, and then like weeks after our West Coast tour, I was seeing people post on like, you got to check out this band Black Moon Cult. They have a fucking theremin player. And it's like, hey, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what people were saying about Flores too. They're like, "This theremin player, what's he doing?" And then you're like, "Oh, that's what he's doing." Turbo, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, I feel like the last theremin, mainstreamy theremin that we got was like John Spencer Blues Explosion. Like, I feel like he had that in one of his videos, and then like I don't know, really if it has been in kind of the pop culture all that much, at least like on the forefront. But I remember very specifically John Spencer doing a lot of that, especially during that Orange record that had the silver cover and some of the other stuff that he was doing. Am I missing something? Is there anything you would that?
My brain can't.
Walk Hard. Walk Hard is where I first heard of the theremin. The Beach Boys parody thing. You gotta open your mind and learn how to play the fucking theremin. That's in. Yeah.
Oh, love it. Caleb, I could talk to you about this stuff all day, but I do want to just ask one more question about. So you probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably have been playing these songs for a while now since you've been on the road. You've done tours, the record's out. You mentioned new stuff that you've been working on. What's the new stuff sound like? Give us a little bit of a verbal preview of what maybe record 2 from Black Moon Cult is going to sound like.
So we had a lot of material that we had been working on the last couple of years, and then since we added Logan to the band, um, and it's that key edition is something we've always wanted, and he's locked into the band so perfectly that it's made us kind of reevaluate some of our writing, uh, and just because we can put chord progressions under my guitar solos now. That's nothing we've never been able to do that sort of thing as a trio. So a lot of the stuff we had, we either scrapped it or we're reworking it now. And we've got a new concept planned for album number 2. Um, I think this one's going to be a little bit more strict of a concept on one half of the. It's going to be kind of like a 2112 type thing, where half of the album is very much concept driven, interconnected kind of master suite kind of thing, And then the other side of the album, we want to mess around with more short form kind of songwriting because every song on this first record is very long, and we wanted to do that. Like we wanted to be like we were like our debut single is going to be 9 minutes long. Fuck it, let's do it. We we try to do all the things that you're not supposed to do and then see how it works out. And it's worked out in our favor so far. So um we're going to dive deeper into the concept thing, but then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into writing shorter, kind of more, a little bit more single driven songs. Um, that's what we've talked about doing, anyways. I might be saying this now, and then when it comes out, it's like 3 20-minute songs or something like that. But it's definitely it's in the vein of the first record, but we're pushing everything we established on the first record. We're pushing the production, we're pushing a lot. As of right now, we're planning on doing it. And Tony Reed has said this publicly too, so I'm okay to say this. But this one we did at a kind of amateur studio here in Ohio, and then we sent it to Tony to mix and master. And it was a problematic recording set. When we recorded, we were having a lot of problems. There's a lot of sounds that we wish would have come out differently. And Tony really saved the record for us and made it sound as good as it does now. And since doing that, Tony has wanted to record our second album from the ground up. So that's what we're planning on doing right now is
Awesome.
going to Washington and recording with Tony. So the production will be leaps and bounds better for one, and then everything that we did that's heavy on the record, we're keeping that vibe but pushing it even heavier. Everything we did that was trippy, we're pushing it even farther into the psychedelic sphere. Anything that was catchy, we want to be catchier. I'm pushing my vocals a lot um, because I've never really been a singer before this band, and that was my first batch of songs where I was really like the front man, only voice, kind of lead singer. Um, and some of it I'm really proud of, and then there's certain things about the album where I hear it and I'm like, I want to do better than this. So if you liked the first one, it's the second one is just going to be that, but on steroids in every way, you know.
Love it. So to summarize what we've learned today, number one, Kaleb is a total music nerd who could hang with just about anybody when it comes to music history, which is very, very cool, and which we definitely look at very positively from this show. Number two, the Monkees were mentioned, and we agree that the Monkees have value with all this stuff. At least Kaleb and I do. Turbo's looking at me like I'm crazy. Number three, every band should have a theremin. Number four, the Florist record is amazing. And number five, we love Black Moon Cult. The record's great. And number six, anything Tony Reed does is pretty much gold, and he makes better in some capacity. I don't want to leave Tony out. He's friend of the show. He's been on twice. I think he was our second guest ever. And just such a great guy, in addition to being just a brilliant musician, writer, producer, music historian, and everything else that he does.
Oh yeah, if you want to talk music nerd, man, we had a few couple-hour phone calls during the mix and master process, and we would get on the phone to talk about the record, and then like one of us would mention David Bowie or the first Black Sabbath album, and I learned so much about I thought I knew a lot about Black Sabbath, but not the first record like he does. I think he might know more than the surviving members at this point. I'm sure they've forgotten stuff that Tony knows like the back of his hand, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, Turbo made the suggestion to have Tony on because we never talked about Sabbath for like the first year of our show because we didn't like have the right person or vibe, or it just seemed like always an obvious thing, right? You're going to talk about Sabbath on the show, but we wanted to have the right guy, and Turbo made the great suggestion of getting Tony, and he talked about his bootleg collection. He talked about like details of those records, like you mentioned, that like probably only he knows, but knows so passionately. It was just such a cool, another discussion that we could have talked for hours about. But Kaleb, this has been awesome. If people had not heard, Ophidian Future, the Children of Yig, go do it. Listen to it. It's awesome. Trippy, heavy, just great stuff. I can't wait to hear what's next from you. I would love to have you back on just to talk about hair metal. I mean, Christmas. We just the bands that we just mentioned, Turbo. It's very, very exciting for people like us to have someone who understands that it was so much more than just the party scene and how talented those folks were. But Kaleb, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Guys. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you, and have a great rest of your night, and can't wait to hear what's next for you guys.
Thanks so much, man. You guys have a good one.
You too.
Thanks a lot, man.